I want you to run a simulation in your head for a second.
Okay.
Imagine a guy entering your timeline today. Let's call him a content creator.
Right.
But honestly, he looks like a disaster. He's scruffy, he's old, barefoot, maybe hasn't showered in a few days.
Not exactly the influencer aesthetic.
No, definitely not. He doesn't have a ring light, he isn't using any trending audio, and he definitely is not trying to sell you a course on passive income or gut health.
So he's already failing the algorithm before he even opens his mouth.
Oh, big time. But he enters your timeline, and instead of posting a hot take or a perfectly curated selfie, he just starts replying to people.
Just jumping into the comments.
Yeah, but he's not trolling, exactly. He just asks one specific question to everyone he meets. He says, "How do you know that's true?"
Oh, man. I can tell you exactly where this goes.
I mean, I think I know where it goes too, but walk me through it. Say he does this to a major political influencer or a tech CEO. What happens?
It's a catastrophe. I mean, within 10 minutes, the community notes are flagging him.
Yeah.
People are quote tweeting him like, look at this sea lining. He gets reported for harassment. And eventually the algorithm just shadow bans him because he's killing engagement.
Just because he's annoying.
No, not because he's annoying.
Yeah.
Because he's dangerous to the platform's actual business model.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that man is Socrates.
It's Socrates.
The father of Western philosophy. And the premise of our deep dive today is actually kind of frightening.
Which is what?
That Socrates, the guy who literally invented the way we think, would not survive one single week on the modern internet.
See, that sounds like a massive exaggeration to me. Because we love critical thinking, right?
We say we do.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. Everyone's bio says free thinker. Surely we wouldn't ban the guy who invented it.
That's what we tell ourselves. But when we dig into the sources for this deep dive,
and we're looking at history, neuroscience, and modern behavioral psychology today.
Exactly. And the evidence suggests otherwise. Our world is actually incredibly fragile. So today we're going to look at why we are biologically wired to hate being questioned.
The actual brain science of it.
Right. And then we're going to walk through this Socratic upgrade system for your brain. Because it turns out we might be running on some very outdated operating systems.
Outdated operating systems is a very polite way of saying we're losing our minds.
Pretty much.
But let's back up to the man himself, because I think for most people listening, Socrates is just a marble statue in a museum somewhere. Who was he, really?
So he lived in Athens around the 5th century BCE. And the most important thing to know is that he was he called himself a gadfly.
A gadfly, like a horsefly.
Yeah, exactly. He saw Athens as this lazy, sluggish horse, and he was the fly biting it to keep it awake.
Which, to be fair, nobody likes a biting fly. Like, if I'm at a picnic, I'm swatting that fly immediately.
Exactly. And that is the exact reaction he got from society. He didn't have a regular job. He never wrote a single book.
Right. Everything we know comes from his student, Plato.
Correct. His entire existence was basically walking the streets, going up to the most powerful people, judges, generals, priests, and asking them to define the words they used every day.
Give me a concrete example. How does that conversation actually go down?
So he'd walk up to a famous general and ask, "What is justice?" Or, "What is courage?"
Okay.
And the general would say something like, "Courage is never retreating in battle."
Sounds reasonable.
Right. But Socrates would say, okay, but what if retreating is a strategic move to ambush the enemy? Is that cowardly?
Oh, I see. And the general would have to admit, well, no, that's just strategy.
Exactly. So Socrates would say, then your definition is wrong. Try again. And he would do this over and over until the general realized he didn't actually know what the word courage meant.
I can totally see why people hated him. He's basically the original reply guy.
He really is.
He's the guy in the comments going, actually.
He is. But here's the key difference. The internet reply guy usually thinks he knows the answer.
Right. He's correcting you to show off.
Yeah, he wants to be right.
Yeah.
But Socrates genuinely claimed he didn't know the answers. His most famous paradox is, I know that I know nothing.
I know that I know nothing? It's a catchy bumper sticker, but was it real? Or was it just false modesty? Because it feels like a bit of a power move.
That's the eternal debate among historians. But the sources argue it was genuine intellectual humility. He was an inquirer, not an expert.
Which is wild to think about today.
Why?
Because think about the modern expert economy. LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, everyone has to be an expert. Everyone has the answer.
Admitting ignorance today is basically admitting defeat.
If you say, I don't know, you lose the audience, you lose your followers.
Exactly. And that friction, that constant questioning of authority, eventually got him killed.
The trial in 399 BCE.
Yes, it is the ultimate example of cancel culture gone lethal.
What were the actual charges?
Two main things: impiety, which meant not respecting the popular gods or beliefs,
Okay.
and corrupting the youth.
Corrupting the youth. That sounds remarkably modern. It sounds exactly like when we talk about radicalization or spreading dangerous ideas.
Precisely. Because he wasn't telling the youth what to think. He was teaching them how to question their elders.
And to the establishment, questioning the narrative is corruption.
Exactly. They sentenced him to death. He was ordered to drink hemlock.
And he just did it.
He calmly drank it. And the big insight from the sources here isn't just that he died. It's why he died. He wasn't killed because he lied or because he was wrong.
He was killed because questioning power makes power uncomfortable.
Destabilizing the narrative is the ultimate crime.
Okay, so ancient Athens killed him because he threatened the power structure. But our thesis for this deep dive is that the modern internet would ban him today.
Within a week.
Is that just because of the algorithms? Or is there something fundamentally broken in our biology? Because I feel like I handle questions pretty well right up until I suddenly don't.
It's both, actually. And they feed each other in this really toxic feedback loop. Let's start with the biology.
The brain science.
Yeah. The source material references some fascinating neuroscience about how our brains process ideological disagreement.
Okay.
When I tell you, hey, you're wrong about that political issue, what happens inside your body?
I get annoyed. My heart rate definitely goes up. I want to argue back. Sometimes I even get hot in the face if I'm really mad.
Right. But strictly speaking, that's weird, isn't it?
Is it?
Think about it. I didn't punch you. I didn't steal your wallet. I just made a sound with my mouth. Why does your body literally prepare for a physical fistfight?
Evolution, I assume.
Exactly. For most of human history, being kicked out of the tribe meant death. You starve, or a predator eats you.
So agreeing with everyone else was how you stayed alive.
Yes. Sharing the same reality was a survival mechanism. So when Socrates comes along and challenges your reality, your amygdala, the lizard brain, the fear center lights up.
It thinks you're under physical attack.
It treats an attack on your ideas the exact same way it treats a tiger jumping out of the bushes.
So just asking, are you sure that's true? Registers as a life or death threat.
Yes. It triggers what psychologists call identity protective cognition. Your brain whispers, if this core belief is wrong, then who am I?
Wow.
And if I don't know who I am, I might get kicked out of the tribe and die.
That seems so drastic for a comment section. My brain thinks I'm gonna die because someone questioned my views on tax policy.
It feels drastic, but that's exactly why comment sections are so toxic. It's not a debate club. It's a gladiator arena where people are fighting for their psychological survival.
Ego death.
Right. Socrates didn't attack people. He attacked false certainty. But to the human brain, stripping away certainty feels like ego death.
And then we throw the algorithm into the mix, which basically monetizes that exact fear response.
Spot on. So you have this biological vulnerability, this deep fear of being wrong, and then you log on to a platform optimized for four specific things.
Certainty, identity, speed, and emotion.
Let's look at those. Speed is the absolute enemy of Socrates.
Because questioning takes time.
Socratic inquiry requires a pause. It requires you to sit with not knowing. But the algorithm wants you to scroll.
Keep moving, keep clicking.
If you stop to reflect, ad revenue drops. So the platforms naturally amplify content that confirms what you already know. That's certainty. And makes you mad at the other team. That's identity.
Because anger keeps you clicking.
Anger is the most viral emotion we have. Nuance is non-viral.
So if Socrates posted a long thread dissecting the true definition of justice,
He would get 12 likes, and half the comments would be telling him to shut up. But if he posted, the Athenians are corrupt and they hate your family, it would trend globally.
that is incredibly depressing. It basically means the system is designed to prevent the one thing that could actually help us.
It creates what the sources define as a toxic culture. And it's not just that people are being mean to each other. It's that we are using language in a way that makes actual understanding impossible.
The outline mentions this idea of undefined words. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Imagine if Socrates walked into a heated comment thread today. People are screaming at each other about freedom or equality or fascism.
Everyday internet stuff.
And he just replies to the biggest argument and asks, what do you mean by that word you just used?
The thread would probably collapse on itself.
It would collapse instantly. Because most arguments today are built on undefined slogans. You and I might use the exact same word but mean two totally different things.
And we don't even realize it until someone asks.
Right. Socrates exposes that gap. He holds up the Socratic mirror. Questions like, how do you know? Or what assumption is this based on? Or who benefits if this belief spreads?
It's like turning on the lights in a dark room. The illusions just scatter.
And illusions hate the light.
Yeah.
The sources also bring up a really interesting comparison here between Aristotle and Socrates regarding virtue.
Let's get into that, because Aristotle is usually the guy we think of when we talk about building habits.
Yes, Aristotle believed virtue was cultivated through habit. You become brave by doing brave things over and over. But Socrates believed virtue was born from awareness, from deep examination, from knowing exactly why you are doing what you are doing.
And today, looking at social media, we seem to be cultivating reaction, not examination.
We are training ourselves to be highly reactive machines. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned us about this centuries ago.
What did he say?
He said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things."
But social media monetizes the disturbance.
Exactly. If you aren't disturbed, you aren't engaging.
It reminds me of the point in our sources about Jordan Peterson.
The need for disciplined speech.
Right. Regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, and we're total neutral on that here, that core philosophical point echoes Socrates perfectly. We need to take responsibility for what we say and how we think.
But Socrates goes even deeper than that. He doesn't try to fix society first. He tries to fix the mechanism of thinking itself.
Okay, we've painted a pretty bleak picture here. We have lizard brains piloted by engagement algorithms. We're all screaming undefined words at each other, and cognitive dissonance is running the world.
It's a mess.
It feels like we're doomed to just be outraged forever. But the sources do offer a practical solution. They call it the Socratic upgrade system.
The Socratic upgrade. Think of it as a patch for your mental operating system. We can't change the internet, and we can't surgically remove our amygdala, but we can override our own buggy code.
Okay, let's walk the listener through this. It's a 5-step framework. Step 1 is separate identity from ideas. We touched on this earlier with ego death, but how do you actually do it? Because it feels impossible in the moment.
You have to change your mental metaphor.
Yeah.
Most people treat their beliefs like body parts.
Like, this opinion is my arm.
Right. This political view is my arm. So if someone attacks it, I scream in pain. You need to start treating beliefs like clothing. Yes. I'm currently wearing this opinion about diet. It seems to fit well today. But if a doctor comes along and says, hey, that shirt has a giant hole in the back, or that shirt is 3 sizes too small, you don't scream at them.
You say, oh, really? Thanks for letting me know. And you change the shirt.
Because beliefs are just tools. If a tool breaks, you replace it. You don't defend a broken hammer like it's your firstborn child.
That requires a massive perspective shift. It basically means you have to be okay with being conceptually naked for a second while you change your mind.
That's the ego death. You have to value the truth more than you value being right.
Okay, step 2 is practice intellectual fasting. This sounds like a diet, and honestly, I hate diets.
It is a diet for your brain, and the challenge is tough. For 1 day a week, consume absolutely no opinion content.
And none.
No editorials, no talking heads on the news, no hot takes on your feed, no podcasts where people tell you what to think.
Present company excluded, of course.
Of course. But the goal is to only look at raw data. If a new bill is passed, go read the actual text of the bill, not the angry tweet about the bill.
That sounds incredibly boring.
It is deeply boring, but that's the entire point. It rewires your addiction to certainty and outrage. It forces you to form your own questions and journal your own contradictions.
Step 3 brings us back to the brain science. It's called master the pause.
This is your neurological reset button. We talked about the amygdala hijacking your brain when you read something you disagree with.
The heat in the face, the fast heartbeat.
When you feel that trigger, you need to stop and breathe slowly for 6 seconds.
Why 6 seconds? Is that just a random number?
No, it's roughly the time it takes to interrupt the chemical cascade of cortisol and adrenaline in your system. You breathe, you consciously label the emotion like, I'm feeling angry right now, and then you ask the magic Socratic question.
Which is,
what belief is being threatened right now?
that is so good. What belief is being threatened? That forces the prefrontal cortex, the logical thinking part of the brain, to come back online.
Exactly. It restores control. Now you have the space to respond, rather than just blindly reacting.
Step 4 is one of my absolute favorites. It's a term I hear in high-level debate circles, but almost never see in real life. Steelman before you strawman.
This is the ultimate test of intellectual honesty. So a straw man is when I intentionally misrepresent your argument to make it easy to defeat.
Right, like if I say I support remote work and you say, oh, so you just want everyone to be lazy and destroy the economy.
Exactly. That's a cartoon version of your point. I knock it down, I win, you lose. A steel man is the exact opposite.
How does that work?
Before I am allowed to disagree with you, I must be able to restate your argument better than you can. I have to build the strongest possible version of your position.
Give me an example using that remote work topic.
Okay, so instead of calling you lazy, I would say, your position is that remote work allows for deeper, uninterrupted focus, it removes the environmental cost of commuting, and it actually increases total output for creative tasks. Is that fair?
And if I say, yes, that's exactly what I mean, then you can argue.
Only then. Because now I'm arguing against your actual point. And more importantly, because I took the time to truly listen to you, your amygdala calms down.
I don't feel attacked anymore. I feel understood.
It's basically a cheat code for respect. Even if we still completely disagree at the end, the temperature in the room drops 10 degrees.
If our politicians had to do this, if they had to explain their opponent's bill until the opponent agreed they understood it, we would solve national problems in half the time.
Without a doubt.
Finally, step 5, build a Socratic circle.
This is about changing your immediate social environment. Create small discussion groups. Maybe it's just a dinner with friends or a group chat where the strict rule is no one debates.
No debates. That sounds like a very quiet dinner party.
No, you still talk.
Yeah.
But only questions are allowed. You can ask for clarification, you can ask for evidence, you can ask what if, but you cannot make a declarative statement.
That sounds incredibly difficult to maintain.
It changes everything. It turns a battleground into an inquiry lab. It forces everyone to lower their shields and actually explore an idea together.
It's amazing how these 5 steps, separating identity from ideas, fasting from opinions, pausing, steel manning, and asking questions, they aren't about being nicer people.
Not at all.
They are about being smarter people.
That's the key takeaway. Socrates wasn't nice. He was relentless. But he was relentless in the pursuit of truth, not in the pursuit of winning an argument.
There's a vision here that the sources paint for us. Imagine if leaders and influencers practiced this. Imagine if comment sections were actually inquiry labs instead of gladiator arenas.
It brings us right back to why he was executed in Athens. Socrates wasn't killed because he was physically dangerous. He was killed because he was liberating.
And free thinkers who question the narrative are very hard to control.
We need this Socratic mind more than ever.
Yeah.
The world doesn't need louder voices. We are drowning in loud voices. It needs deeper questions. The most powerful problem-solving tool we have isn't AI. It isn't a new app. It is inquiry. And that tool is 2,400 years old.
Before we wrap up, I have to share the humor moment from the source material because it highlights exactly how absurd this disconnect between ancient wisdom and modern tech really is.
Oh, I love this part.
Imagine Socrates logging onto Twitter or X today.
I'm visualizing it. He's got a little toga for his profile pic.
He posts a very simple, classic Socratic tweet. He just types, "What is truth?"
Okay. Seems innocuous enough.
40,000 replies later, people are screaming at each other, bots are spamming crypto scams in the thread, political partisans are calling him a traitor to the country.
A totally normal Tuesday on the timeline.
And after reading all of it, he finally replies to the chaos. Interesting, but what do you mean by the word is?
And instant ban.
Gone. Account suspended for violating community standards on existential dread.
But that joke really highlights the core issue, doesn't it? We assume we know what is means. We assume we know the basics of justice, truth, and virtue. He challenged the very foundation of our assumptions.
So as we close this deep dive, we have a challenge for you, the listener. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
But in the digital age, looking at what we've covered today, I think we need to modify that ancient wisdom.
The unquestioned feed is not worth scrolling.
That is the bumper sticker right there.
If this conversation made you uncomfortable at any point today, if you felt a little defensive when we talked about ego death or holding on to beliefs, that means it's working.
That is your inner Socrates waking up.
So here is our final provocative question for you to take with you today. Something to mull over on your own. What belief have you never questioned?
Really think about that.
What is the one thing you are so certain of you've never even bothered to ask why? Think about that. And hey, if you want to help the algorithm promote some actual thinking for a change, share this deep dive with someone who loves a good question. Let's bring back thinking, one question at a time. Thanks for listening.
Stay curious.